Picture a world where the sun never sets, permanently nailed to the horizon in a sky of eternal bruising twilight. Here, the landscape is locked in a fierce, unyielding standoff between a scorching, sterilized desert and a lightless tomb of frozen mountains. The weather is not a passing season, but a permanent howling geography of wind and shadow. Imagine a vast, unblinking ocean of deep, liquid blue staring defiantly back at its host star. Surrounding this isolated pupil of warmth, the water suddenly freezes into a global shell of infinite white ice, marking the absolute edge of survival. To cross this boundary is to step out of the light and plunge into a dark, frozen exile. Deep within the silent reaches of the cosmos, entire solar systems are winding down their chaotic planetary clocks. The frantic, spinning energy of their fiery births is being systematically drained away by the relentless tides of gravity. They are surrendering to an inevitable, perfectly synchronized waltz where celestial bodies are forced to look each other in the eye forever. Surprisingly, the violent, grinding friction that orchestrates this cosmic submission ultimately produces a state of absolute, unshakable calm. This profound resolution in the dark void perfectly mirrors the heavy, comforting fatigue that is currently settling deep into your own resting limbs. You're safe. If we were to look closer at this moment, we would find that your bed is a pristine sanctuary, perfectly shielded from the supersonic gales and extreme temperatures of the stars. Allow the muscles in your jaw and shoulders to finally release their lingering tension, melting softly into the welcoming fabric of your pillow. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep. This transition from the chaotic demands of the waking day into the heavy, peaceful stillness of the night is a natural law of its own. Your breathing slows, matching the patient, ancient pacing of worlds that have finally found their permanent rest in the dark. The universe operates on a quiet, invisible tension that mimics the gentle, rhythmic pull of an unseen ocean tide on a midnight shore. The universe operates on a quiet, invisible tension that mimics the gentle, rhythmic pull of an unseen ocean tide on a midnight shore. When we envision gravity, we often picture a straightforward, linear attraction, pulling two massive spheres together across the dark expanse of space. However, the reality of orbital mechanics is far more elastic and infinitely more complex. Celestial bodies are not perfectly rigid spheres of unyielding stone and metal. They are malleable entities capable of profound deformation. As a moon orbits its parent planet, the gravitational grip is perceptibly stronger on the near side than on the far side. This microscopic difference in attraction physically stretches the entire world, elongating it into a faint, imperceptible oval rather than a perfect globe. Deep within the rocky mantle and swirling core, millions of tons of planetary matter bulge outward along the axis of gravitational pull. The resulting deformation creates a tidal bulge that silently points toward the larger host, an enduring monument to the unequal tug of orbital forces. We must understand this fundamental stretching to comprehend the inevitable destiny of countless worlds. Consider the immense geological strain experienced by a world that dares to spin freely while caught in such a distorted, elongated shape. As the moon rotates on its axis, different sections of its crust and mantle are continuously forced into and out of the gravitational bulge. This relentless kneading motion bends the very bedrock of the world, generating a tremendous amount of internal friction deep beneath the surface. The solid ground literally rises and falls in slow, devastating waves, much like the rhythmic swelling of our own oceans, but composed entirely of rigid silicate and iron. This immense subterranean grinding converts the planet's forward rotational momentum directly into raw, radiating heat. Entire continents of subsurface rock are subjected to a constant, agonizing massage that slowly alters the internal thermal dynamics of the sphere. Such unrelenting friction cannot be sustained indefinitely without a profound consequence for the spinning satellite. The mechanical energy required to constantly deform and reshape a world acts as an invisible planet-wide parasite. it quietly feeds on the kinetic energy of the rotation itself, setting the stage for a dramatic cosmic deceleration. Time in the cosmos operates on a scale so vast that even the most microscopic forces can completely reshape a celestial relationship. Over millions and billions of years, the ceaseless internal friction acts as a massive, unavoidable cosmic brake on the rotating body. Each rotation exacts a tiny toll, a fractional loss of kinetic energy that bleeds away into the cold vacuum of space as scattered heat. The spinning world fights against this unseen friction, but the laws of thermodynamics dictate an eventual surrender to the parent planet's immense gravitational authority. Slowly but surely, the length of a single day on this besieged moon begins to stretch and elongate. What once might have been a rapid, dizzying spin slows to a lethargic, heavy rotation, as if the entire planet were wading through an ocean of invisible molasses. A profound moment of cosmic synchronization inevitably approaches as the braking forces continue their agonizingly slow work over eons. Eventually, the smaller body's rotation slows to the precise point where a single day lasts exactly as long as a single year. This mathematical perfection means the time it takes the moon to spin once on its axis flawlessly mirrors the time it takes to travel around its host. For an observer standing on the surface of this newly stabilized world, the heavens above would suddenly transform from a spinning dome to a fixed panorama. The parent planet would halt its relentless march across the sky, anchoring itself permanently in one unyielding position. This exact matching of orbital and rotational periods marks the threshold where a dynamic, spinning globe transforms into a captured captive audience. Imagine standing on a world where the primary source of light and gravity never moves from its designated spot in the sky. One entire hemisphere of the satellite becomes forever locked, facing its parent body in an eternal, unwavering stare across the lonely void. This side of the world is granted a permanent looming companion, casting eternal shadows that never stretch or shift with the passage of time. The invisible tether has now solidified into an unbreakable bond, ensuring the smaller companion will never again turn its back on its master. This stark division of territory completely alters the evolutionary trajectory of the satellite, dictating everything from surface temperatures to potential atmospheric flows. The unwavering stare becomes a permanent monument to the incredible, invisible strength of gravity's slow, persistent triumph. We often conceptualize the universe as a theatre of perpetual motion, filled with wildly spinning tops and frantically racing celestial bodies. Surprisingly, the cosmos actually favours this locked stillness over the chaotic, endless spinning of isolated, youthful planets. Orbital mechanics are driven by an underlying necessity to seek out the lowest possible energy state, discarding excess momentum whenever a physical pathway allows. Tidal locking represents the ultimate energetic resting place for any close celestial relationship, a serene plateau reached after billions of years of frictional labour. The universe is inherently lazy in its grandest designs, gently coercing chaotic, fast-spinning systems into quiet, highly ordered, and perfectly synchronized geometries. When the kinetic energy of rotation is fully dissipated, the system achieves a state of profound, undisturbed tranquility. This preference for stillness reveals a fundamental truth about the nature of gravity and time in the vast expanse of the void. What appears to us as a dramatic loss of planetary momentum is merely the cosmos meticulously balancing its intricate gravitational equations. The eternal stare is not a prison sentence for these worlds, but rather the natural, elegant conclusion to a turbulent physical birth. It is tempting to view a tidally locked world as a strange, isolated freak of nature, an unlucky victim of a heavy gravitational trap. In truth, tidal locking is not a rare anomaly, but the absolute inevitable destiny of almost all close-orbiting companions scattered throughout the cosmos. From the dense moons of distant gas giants to the rocky exoplanets hugging their fading red dwarf stars, this phenomenon is incredibly ubiquitous. Any two bodies situated in close proximity will eventually succumb to this mutual braking effect, provided they endure long enough to see the process complete. The invisible stretching and the resulting friction are universal constants, operating with the same ruthless efficiency in our local solar system as they do in galaxies billions of light-years away. If an orbit is sufficiently tight, the mathematical certainty of a synchronized rotation becomes an unavoidable cosmic law. We must recognize this process as a standard phase of planetary aging, rather than an exception to the rules of celestial dynamics. Countless billions of worlds currently residing in the darkest corners of the universe have already achieved this quiet, locked equilibrium. They silently orbit their hosts, a vast army of captured satellites staring blankly into the eternal fires of their parent stars. Picture a skilled dancer grasping the hands of a heavier partner, spinning together across a vast, darkened ballroom floor. To maintain their balance and rhythm at high speeds, the lighter dancer must continuously keep their face turned inward, focused entirely on the central axis of their shared rotation. This elegant choreography perfectly mirrors the physical reality of a tidally locked moon circling its massive, commanding host planet. The gravitational pull acts as the unbreakable grip between their hands, providing the vital tension required to keep the smaller body from flying away into the void. Just as the dancer cannot safely look away or spin independently without breaking the fluid motion of the waltz, the moon cannot rotate freely. Every orbital revolution is a sweeping step in a synchronized routine that has been practiced and perfected over billions of years. The immense angular momentum shared between the two bodies dictates this inward-facing posture, locking them in a graceful, never-ending embrace. Should the lighter partner attempt to twist away, the immense physical strain of the invisible tether would quickly force them back into alignment. It is a spectacular, silent performance enacted on a cosmic scale, a ballet written in the rigid mathematics of orbital resonance. The laws of physics demand a strict accounting of all forces, meaning the massive rotational energy stripped from the slowing moon cannot simply vanish. Energy is flawlessly conserved throughout this agonizingly slow process, flowing outward through the invisible tether like water through a vital, unseen conduit. The kinetic momentum lost from the moon's daily spin is meticulously transferred directly into the wider sweeping momentum of its overall orbit. As the host planet continues to drag the tidal bulge forward, it physically pulls the smaller companion along, accelerating it ever so slightly in its orbital path. This constant injection of energy forces the moon into a wider, higher trajectory, slowly pushing it further away from the parent body. The relationship is characterized by a haunting exchange. As the moon sacrifices its independent spin, it gains a greater distance and a more expansive orbital perimeter. For instance, our own lunar companion drifts away from Earth at a rate of roughly 4 centimeters every single year due to this exact phenomenon. The cosmic braking mechanism actively reshapes the dimensions of the entire system, expanding the boundaries of the orbit while simultaneously freezing the rotation. It is a stunning, slow-motion expansion, a flawless balancing of the cosmic ledger over unimaginable spans of time. Deep within the metallic core and silicate mantle of these newly locked worlds, a profound and lasting peace finally takes hold. The agonizing planet-wide stretching that defined the moon's chaotic youth eventually settles into a quiet, permanent equilibrium beneath the frozen surface. The massive tidal bulge still exists, pointing faithfully toward the host, but it no longer sweeps destructively across the planetary crust. Without the constant grinding friction of rotation, the intense internal heat generation rapidly subsides, allowing the tortured geology to slowly cool and solidify. The sweeping waves of solid rock halt their rhythmic rise and fall, leaving behind a scarred, silent world forever moulded by its turbulent past. Volcanoes driven by tidal heating may go dormant, and the violently shifting tectonic plates may finally lock securely into place. This subterranean calmness represents the absolute fulfillment of the invisible tether's long, arduous mission to balance the celestial scales. The world has fully adapted to its environment, transforming from a dynamic, shifting sphere into a serene, structurally stable monument to gravity's power. In the deepest, darkest heart of the locked companion, the violent echoes of its early spinning days are silenced forever. Though the violent echoes of its early spinning days are silenced forever, the resulting stillness leaves us with a singular, unwavering portrait suspended eternally in the midnight sky. Looking up from our terrestrial vantage point, humanity is granted an exclusive, unchanging view of our faithful lunar companion. For as long as conscious eyes have turned toward the heavens to seek meaning in the dark, the moon has presented the exact same silver craters and darkened plains to our world. This steadfast orientation is not merely a random alignment of stone and dust, but a permanent astronomical treaty signed in the intricate binding language of orbital mechanics. No matter where you travel across the vast rolling oceans of the Earth, or what season frames your observation, this pale companion never turns its head. It is as if the cosmos has carefully painted a magnificent melancholic portrait and hung it securely in the celestial gallery, deliberately restricting our perspective to a single chosen angle. The illusion of a flat, two-dimensional disk floating silently above us is remarkably convincing, largely because we are entirely deprived of the spatial depth that comes from watching a sphere independently rotate. Entire mythologies and civilizations have been built around the specific shapes and shadows of this single illuminated hemisphere. We are forever bound to this specific face, intimately familiar with a stark, ancient geography we have never actually touched. Beyond the glowing edge of that familiar silver disk lies a vast hidden territory that remained entirely concealed from human eyes for the entirety of our species' existence. The far side of the moon was an ultimate blank spot on our celestial maps, a profound, lingering mystery that fueled endless speculation and fantastical stories. Because the lunar rotation is perfectly synchronized with its sweeping orbit, no telescope on Earth, no matter how powerful, could ever peer around that curving horizon. It required the dawn of the space age and the ingenious calculating trajectory of the Soviet Luna 3 probe in the 20th century to finally unveil this forbidden landscape. When those grainy historic photographs were first beamed back across the void to Earth, they revealed a world that defied our expectations and shattered our assumptions of lunar symmetry. The mechanical eyes of the spacecraft accomplished what millions of years of patient human observation could not, forever stripping away the veil of gravitational locking. As you breathe in slowly, feeling the steady, calming rhythm of your chest, consider how deeply certain cosmic secrets are kept from our terrestrial view. The stunning revelation of the far side was a profound reminder that our perspective from Earth is inherently limited by the invisible physics binding our local system. We were finally forced to acknowledge that we share our orbit with a complete, incredibly complex three-dimensional world, not just a painted ceiling. The photographic evidence revealed a stunning dichotomy, proving that the moon is a world of two drastically different faces forged by its locked orientation. Because of the incredible unyielding gravitational grip of the Earth, the near side crust was historically pulled thinner, allowing ancient magma to easily seep upward and flood massive impact basins. These monumental volcanic eruptions cooled slowly into the vast dark plains we call Maria, which form the familiar shadowy shapes we recognize as the man in the moon. This profound geological difference means the tidal lock did not just temporarily stop the moon from spinning, it fundamentally altered the planet's physical evolution over billions of years. The immense gravitational tide effectively sorted the lunar geology, creating a smooth, dark face for its parent planet and a heavily armoured hemisphere facing the deep, empty void. It is a stunning, terrifying example of how a close celestial relationship can permanently reshape the very bedrock of a captive world. Our planetary relationship was forged in the absolute deep time of the early solar system, long before the first primitive cells stirred in Earth's ancient boiling oceans. Earth's gravitational grip was so immediately overpowering that it forced the Moon into this synchronous rotation shortly after the satellite coalesced from a ring of primordial debris. The cosmic braking mechanism worked with ruthless, unfathomable efficiency, rapidly draining the rotational energy of the molten lunar sphere while its surface was still glowing and dangerously pliable. By the time complex, multicellular life finally began to crawl from our seas and walk upon the shifting continents, the Moon had already been staring down at them for billions of years. The massive dinosaurs roamed beneath the exact same static lunar geography that softly illuminates our modern sprawling cities today. This enduring, unchanging gaze serves as a timeless anchor in the night sky, an unbroken silver thread connecting every single epoch of terrestrial biology to the same celestial witness. Relax your shoulders gently against whatever is supporting you, allowing the immense, comforting weight of that deep, unbroken time to wash over your resting body. The quiet, reliable stability of the lunar face is one of the very few constants in the chaotic, ever-changing history of our fragile biosphere. It is a profoundly humbling realization that our entire evolutionary journey has taken place under the watchful eye of a world that had already found its permanent silent rest. Despite being firmly locked in its eternal orbital dance, the Moon is not entirely frozen in place. It possesses a subtle, rhythmic sway that betrays the hidden complexity of its path. Because the lunar orbit is slightly elliptical rather than perfectly circular, the Moon's travel speed varies slightly, moving faster when it's closer to Earth and slower when it drifts farther away. Meanwhile, its own internal rotation remains absolutely rigidly constant, creating a slight desynchronization between its turning speed and its current orbital position. This delicate, ongoing mismatch generates a gentle optical wobble known as libration, allowing patient observers on Earth to occasionally peek just around the curved, shadowed edges of the lunar disk. Over the course of a single month, the Moon appears to slowly nod its head up and down and shake it slightly from side to side in the dark. It is as if the captive satellite is subtly testing the invisible chains of its gravitational prison, offering fleeting, teasing glimpses of its hidden, forbidden territories. Thanks to this rhythmic, rocking motion, humanity can actually observe roughly 59% of the total lunar surface over time, rather than a strict, unforgiving 50%. These temporary windows into the far side are a beautiful, astronomical reminder that perfectly rigid systems rarely exist in the organic, flowing architecture of the cosmos. The lock is incredibly secure, yet the intricate celestial mechanics allow for a mesmerizing slow-motion breath that subtly shifts our midnight perspective. If we were to look closer at the complex mathematics governing this relationship, we would discover that the tidal interaction is not entirely a one-way street. While the Earth has successfully halted the Moon's independent spin, our massive planet is also actively being slowed down by the persistent, unyielding gravitational drag of its much smaller companion. The immense energy required to pull the heavy oceans into high and low tides across our globe acts as a tremendous friction brake on the Earth's daily, rapid rotation. Every single time the tide rolls in and crashes heavily against a continental shelf, a microscopic fraction of our planet's rotational momentum is permanently lost to the cosmos. This continuous watery friction is actively lengthening the terrestrial day by roughly 2 milliseconds every century, gently stretching the hours we have to live. It is a profoundly slow deceleration, completely imperceptible to fragile human senses, yet absolutely relentless in its mechanical execution over vast geological timescales. Sink a little deeper into your resting space, feeling the heavy, comforting pull of the very gravity that connects these two massive spheres across the emptiness. Just as the Moon was aggressively tamed in its fiery youth, our own dynamic world is gradually surrendering its chaotic kinetic energy to the vastness of the surrounding vacuum. We are participating in the exact same slowing process, marching inexorably toward a distant, unimaginable future where the rhythms of day and night will be vastly different. Imagine standing directly on the dusty, charcoal-coloured plains of the lunar near side, encased safely in a pressurised suit, and looking back toward your distant, vibrant home. In this utterly alien landscape, the fundamental rules of celestial motion you have known your entire life would be completely inverted and rewritten. The magnificent, swirling blue and white marble of the earth would not rise in the east or set in the west, but would hover securely in the exact same spot in the black sky forever. As the silent lunar days and weeks passed, you would watch the earth cycle through its brilliant shifting phases, waxing and waning from a thin sapphire crescent to a dazzling full globe. You would witness entire green continents rotating into view, and powerful white weather systems swirling across the dark oceans, all while the planet itself remained absolutely stationary relative to the lunar horizon. The solid ground beneath your boots would be rigidly locked in place, providing a permanently fixed observation deck for watching the dynamic terrestrial drama unfold. This localized suspension of cosmic movement creates an eerie, deeply peaceful environment where time seems to stand completely, utterly still. The overwhelming visual presence of the static Earth would dominate the lunar sky, casting a soft blue radiance known as Earthshine over the silent craters during the freezing 2-week nights. It is a magnificent geographical privilege granted only to the near side, a permanent audience seat to the greatest, most colourful show in the local solar system. Conversely, an observer stationed on the rugged, mountainous terrain of the lunar far side would experience an entirely different and profoundly isolated reality. To walk freely among those hidden, ancient craters is to be completely severed from the visual connection to your home planet, existing in a realm where the Earth simply does not exist in the heavens. No matter how long you waited or how high you climbed up the steep crater walls, the brilliant blue marble would never crest the horizon to break the absolute darkness of the deep void. This utter absence of the host planet creates a dark sky that belongs entirely to the distant, unblinking stars, the sweeping arc of the Milky Way, and the blazing, unmitigated furnace of the sun. The far side is physically and electromagnetically shielded from the overwhelming radio noise and bright glare of terrestrial civilization, offering the quietest, darkest observing conditions imaginable. It is a magnificent region of pristine cosmic silence, forever turned outward toward the infinite, mysterious expanse of the wider galaxy. Let your breathing match the slow, silent drift of those stars across that hidden, alien sky, embracing the profound quiet of true celestial isolation. The strict geographical divide of the tidal lock ensures that half of the world remains forever tethered to its master's gaze, while the other half is abandoned to the deep, endless dark. It is a planetary hemisphere defined not by what it sees, but by the colossal, life-bearing sphere it is forever forbidden from witnessing. This delicate balance of visual presence and total absence is maintained by a flawless, invisible choreography that perfectly synchronizes two vastly different types of planetary motion. For the moon to continuously keep one face hidden and one face shown, it must travel around the Earth at the exact same rotational speed that it turns upon its own internal axis. This astonishing mathematical reality means a single lunar day, measuring the time it takes for the sun to cross its sky, lasts for roughly 29 terrestrial days. As the moon slowly and silently glides along its orbital path, it is simultaneously executing an incredibly slow, deliberate pirouette that perfectly counters its forward motion through the void. If it were to spin even a fraction of a percent faster, the hidden far side would eventually rotate into our view, utterly destroying the timeless comforting illusion. If it were to spin slightly slower, the familiar near side would slowly slip away into the shadows, irrevocably altering the shape of the night sky forever. The sheer mathematical precision of this orbital dance is a brilliant testament to the inescapable, refining power of gravitational friction acting over unfathomable stretches of deep time. Every microscopic adjustment has already been made, every excess ounce of kinetic energy carefully stripped away and peacefully released into the cosmos. The resulting movement is a true masterpiece of celestial mechanics, a perfectly tuned system operating with a silent grace that completely defies the immense violence of its origins. Such absolute, perfect synchronization ultimately creates the compelling illusion of a static, unmoving satellite hanging quietly in our otherwise dynamic and chaotic solar system. While massive planets rush along elliptical paths, rocky asteroids tumble blindly through the dark, and comets blaze brilliantly past the sun, the moon appears to sit calmly, completely unfazed by the cosmic rush. It acts as a serene, glowing silver anchor in the night, a reassuring symbol of absolute permanence for the rapidly spinning world turning wildly below it. This beautiful stillness, however, is merely a magnificent trick of perspective born from the massive invisible tether connecting the two celestial spheres. The moon is actually moving at incredible speeds, hurtling through the freezing vacuum of space while simultaneously falling continuously toward the Earth without ever hitting it. It is the flawless, mathematical matching of these violent high-energy velocities that produces the serene, calming picture of a perfectly resting globe suspended in the void. As you let the immense weight of these cosmic mechanics settle deeply into your mind, allow the illusion of that quiet stillness to seep into your own resting body. The universe has diligently invested billions of years of immense gravitational force just to create this specific, unwavering view of a locked satellite. It is a brilliant masterclass in how raw, terrifying physical power can eventually resolve into a state of profound, eternal peace. That state of profound, eternal peace is not limited to isolated satellites dancing around rocky planets. It dominates entire stellar neighborhoods across the cosmos. Deep within the sprawling arms of spiraling galaxies, a dim, permanent crimson glow bathes countless barren landscapes in a completely different kind of light. These faint embers are red dwarf stars, stellar furnaces so small and incredibly cool that they barely manage to sustain the nuclear fusion burning within their cores. Because these fiery bodies radiate only a tiny fraction of the heat produced by larger stars, their warmth does not extend very far into the freezing void. Any rocky world hoping to maintain liquid oceans and a stable climate must orbit astonishingly close to the stellar surface. This desperately tight embrace forces the planetary path inward, compressing the entire habitable region into a narrow ring hovering just above the atmospheric fires of the star. To exist in this life-friendly proximity is to endure a ferocious and unyielding gravitational pull from the massive central anchor. The gentle warming rays required to spark biological chemistry come with an inescapable physical cost paid in orbital momentum. A planet residing here trades its rotational freedom for the meagre, life-sustaining heat of its dying crimson host. Such extreme proximity guarantees that the invisible tether of gravity operates with an overwhelming, accelerated ferocity compared to wider, more distant orbits. The immense differential pull across the diameter of a planet squeezed so tightly against its host creates a truly massive stretching effect. This extreme deformation generates catastrophic levels of internal friction, acting like a brutal emergency brake on the young world's independent spin. While it might take billions of years for a distant satellite to fully surrender its momentum, these intimately close planets are subdued relatively quickly in astronomical terms. The rotational energy is aggressively stripped away, rapidly forcing the desperate world into an inescapable, synchronized rhythm with its dim master. Almost every single planetary body fortunate enough to find itself in these narrow temperate bands is inevitably subdued by this mechanical destiny. The result is a sprawling population of captured terrestrial spheres scattered densely throughout the local interstellar neighborhood. They are swiftly locked into a permanent orientation, presenting a singular, unblinking face toward the faint heat source keeping them alive. It is a harsh, non-negotiable term of survival, dictated by the ruthless mathematics of occupying a tight, life-permitting orbit. A magnificent, crowded family of these captured worlds exists in a famous nearby system known as the TRAPPIST network, a dazzling testament to this universal rule. Surrounding an ultra-cool stellar dwarf, no fewer than 7 rocky terrestrial planets trace incredibly tight, frantic circles in the dark. The entire system is so remarkably compact that all 7 orbits could easily fit within the path of the innermost planet of our own solar neighbourhood. Astronomers firmly believe that every single member of this remarkable planetary family has been thoroughly tamed by the overwhelming central gravity. They are caught in a collective synchronized gaze, 7 distinct spheres all keeping one face perpetually pointing toward their shared central fire. It is a stunning cosmic diorama, a meticulously arranged system of locked siblings sharing the exact same crimson light. Allow the gentle rise and fall of your breathing to anchor you as you visualize these 7 sister worlds, tracing their endless, dizzying paths. The sheer density of such a system defies our traditional understanding of planetary spacing, presenting a claustrophobic yet mathematically stable orbital architecture. They dance together in permanent alignment, perfectly balanced on the razor edge between freezing isolation and fiery destruction. On the illuminated hemisphere of these divided worlds, the concept of a passing day is entirely erased by the overwhelming presence of the central star. The crimson orb does not rise from a designated horizon, arc across the heavens, or sink slowly into the evening shadows. Instead, it hangs utterly motionless, suspended like a massive fiery red eye pinned permanently to the alien sky. Standing directly at the substellar point, the exact centre of this eternal day, an observer would feel the relentless, unyielding glare of a sun that never ever blinks. The shadows cast by rocky outcroppings and towering mountains remain completely stationary, etched into the dusty ground like dark painted lines. The atmosphere bakes continually under this focused, never-ending assault of light and radiation, forging a bizarre, static meteorology. Moving away from this scorching centre toward the edges of the hemisphere, the massive red sun simply appears lower and lower in the sky without ever actually setting. It creates a surreal landscape bathed in a perpetual bloody twilight, where the shadows are infinitely long but entirely motionless. This permanent illumination forces any potential surface chemistry to adapt to a reality completely devoid of cyclical darkness. Conversely, crossing the planetary divide plunges you into a realm of absolute unfathomable cold and endless suffocating darkness. The night side of a captive world is entirely cut off from the life-giving warmth of the central star, facing outward into the unforgiving chill of the galactic void. It is a hemisphere of eternal midnight, a sprawling frozen wasteland that has never once experienced the comforting warmth of a dawn. Temperatures on this abandoned face plummet to terrifying extremes, potentially freezing the very atmospheric gases into solid sheets of exotic ice across the bedrock. Without the gentle, rotating cycle of sunlight to evenly distribute thermal energy, this side of the planet becomes a permanent deep space refrigerator. Any vast oceans that might have once existed here are transformed into miles-thick glaciers of unyielding, darkened ice. The sky above this desolate icescape is completely dominated by the brilliant, piercing light of distant constellations and sprawling nebulas. It offers an unbroken, perfectly clear view of the deeper universe, untainted by the blinding interference of a local sun. Yet, this magnificent astronomical vista comes at the ultimate cost of permanent deadly isolation from the only heat source in the system. We often dream of verdant, spinning globes scattered across the cosmos, but the actual mathematical distribution of stars paints a vastly different picture. Red dwarfs are incredibly abundant, vastly outnumbering the brighter, hotter stars in the sweeping spiral arms of our immense galaxy. because they are the most common stellar residents. Their tight, locked habitable zones represent the most likely location for rocky worlds to exist. Scientists carefully estimate that the vast majority of all potentially life-bearing planets in the universe are actually trapped in this permanent state of divided light and shadow. The classic comfortable rotation we experience on our own vibrant world is likely a rare luxury, an astronomical exception rather than the standard rule. Most alien landscapes are inherently split into these harsh binary domains of eternal fire and perpetual ice. Let your resting body sink heavily into the quiet comfort of your own environment, feeling the safety of a world that still turns gently in the dark. To realise that most terrestrial spheres will never know the rhythm of a sunrise is a profound shift in our cosmic perspective. The universe is overwhelmingly populated by these divided, staring worlds, locked in a silent, enduring struggle against their own internal extremes. We do not need to look far into the deepest, unmapped corners of the cosmos to find striking evidence of this synchronous embrace. Our absolute closest stellar neighbour, a faint red dwarf known as Proxima Centauri, harbours a rocky terrestrial planet orbiting exactly within its narrow habitable band. This neighbouring world, tantalisingly close in astronomical terms, is almost certainly caught in this exact same unyielding gravitational trap. The realisation that the very next star over hosts a planet gripped by eternal stillness brings this massive cosmic phenomenon right to our galactic doorstep. It emphasises that this rigid orbital architecture is not an abstract concept relegated to distant, unreachable galaxies, but a very local reality. The silent, staring planetary face is the dominant geographic feature of our immediate interstellar neighbourhood. Notice how the fundamental, ingrained concept of a passing day completely and utterly loses its meaning when standing on the surface of these divided worlds. A day is inherently defined by the dynamic rotation of a sphere, the cyclical transition from warming light to cooling shadow and back again. When a planet ceases to turn relative to its heat source, the very framework of local time collapses into a static, unchanging present. The passage of time becomes an invisible, abstract concept, completely divorced from the physical reality of the sky directly above. Without the reliable, ticking clock of a rotating sun, the psychological impact on any conscious observer would be profoundly disorienting. You would exist in a persistent, unwavering now, surrounded by an environment that entirely refuses to cycle, breathe, or visibly change. If the primary star hangs motionless and the shadows never lengthen, establishing any functional rhythm of time requires looking far beyond the local sky. Time on such captive planets would have to be meticulously measured by the subtle, shifting movement of other celestial bodies passing through the background void. Watching neighbouring sister planets cross the heavens, or tracking the slow drift of distant constellations would become the only reliable cosmic clocks available. Alternatively, observers might be forced to measure the passage of eras by monitoring the slow, inevitable aging and magnetic shifting of the central star itself. These crimson dwarfs are notorious for violent, unpredictable flares, creating sudden bursts of deadly radiation that could serve as chaotic, terrifying markers of passing time. Biological life evolving in such an environment would have to completely separate its internal rhythms from the static presence of light. Relax the muscles in your jaw and neck, appreciating the simple, predictable rhythm of your own local sun continuously marking the days for you. Organisms on a locked world might rely entirely on internal chemical clocks or the rhythmic pulsing of deep geothermal vents to structure their existence. Their entire perception of duration and aging would be radically alienated from our deeply sun-centric biological programming. For generations, we have filled our stories and imaginations with sweeping romantic visions of alien sunrises cresting over strange exotic horizons. We picture twin suns setting dramatically behind jagged mountains, painting unfamiliar clouds in vibrant shifting hues of violet and gold as evening approaches. However, the harsh statistical reality of this widespread cosmic phenomenon means the vast majority of these imagined sunsets simply do not exist. The universe is not a chaotic tapestry of endless spinning twilights, but rather a profoundly silent gallery of static, unchanging skies. The beautiful cyclical fading of light that defines the rhythm of our own terrestrial existence is a vanishingly rare performance in the grand cosmic theatre. Most terrestrial spheres offer only a harsh, blinding permanence or a deep, unyielding void, with absolutely no comforting transition between the two extremes. This realization forces us to drastically reimagine the true nature of the cosmos, replacing the dynamic, turning worlds of fiction with the eerie stillness of reality. The sweeping crimson sky of a captured planet remains forever fixed, an eternal painting burned permanently into the atmosphere. The universe is overwhelmingly quiet, vast and locked in a heavy unmoving stare that outlasts the eons. This unmoving stare that outlasts the eons creates a unique physical distribution of liquid water that would seem utterly bizarre to our terrestrial sensibilities. On a world that spins, water is distributed by centrifugal force and complex seasonal cycles, but here it obeys only the dictates of a static thermal gradient. Vast reservoirs of liquid are not spread across the globe in scattered basins, but are forced into highly localized geometric patterns determined by their distance from the unblinking sun. The resulting hydrology is remarkably predictable and terrifyingly permanent, fixed in place by the unrelenting heat of a stationary star. If we were to look closer, we would see that the very concept of a global tide is replaced by a static, bulging ocean that never recedes or advances. It is a world where geography is synonymous with climate, and water is a prisoner of its own location. The presence of water is no longer a matter of chance or weather, but a rigid mathematical function of the planet's fixed orientation to its sun. Directly beneath the zenith of that stationary star lies the substellar point, a region of absolute unmitigated thermal intensity. This central hub receives the maximum concentration of stellar radiation, transforming the surface into a site of perpetual high-energy upheaval. Surprisingly, the universe does not provide a calm oasis here, but instead hosts a boiling, continuous storm that rages across the geographic centre of the dayside. The immense heat causes water to flash into steam at an incredible rate, fueling a vertical conveyor belt of moisture that never rests. This structure of clouds and lightning remains anchored to the same patch of ocean for millions of years, a permanent hurricane that defines the planet's atmospheric heart. It is the engine of the world, a violent and beautiful centre that drives the entire planetary circulation and distributes energy across the hemisphere. To witness this storm would be to see the raw power of tidal locking expressed through the fluid dynamics of air and water. If we were to travel outward from this boiling atmospheric heart, we would witness a rapid and terrifying decline in ambient temperature. As the angle of the stationary sun lowers toward the distant horizon, the liquid surface begins to surrender its warmth to the encroaching chill of the vacuum. Eventually, the water gives way to a global shell of ice that encases the rest of the planet in a rigid, unyielding embrace of white. This transition does not occur over thousands of miles, but can happen with startling speed as the thermal equilibrium shifts. The world is effectively divided into a warm, open eye and a vast, lightless tomb of frozen mountains and plains. Take a moment to feel the steady weight of your own body, resting in a climate that changes only with the seasons, unlike this world of static extremes. This global shell of ice acts as a perfect thermal insulator, trapping whatever internal heat remains within the planetary core and protecting the hidden depths. This unique arrangement of fire and frost carves a distinct anatomical silhouette into the planetary surface that can be seen from the depths of interstellar space. The central, liquid ocean forms a dark, circular pupil of deep blue, surrounded by the brilliantly reflective white of the global ice fields. It creates the haunting appearance of a massive eyeball staring unblinkingly back at its host star across the dark void. This ocular appearance is more than just a visual curiosity. It is a direct map of the planet's energy balance. The dark pupil absorbs the star's heat with incredible efficiency, while the white surrounding sclera reflects the light back into space, preventing the world from overheating. It is a self-regulating system of light and dark, a celestial iris that maintains the precarious balance of a locked world. This structure is one of the most striking visual signatures an alien astronomer might seek when hunting for habitable worlds among the stars. Deep within the transition zone between the boiling centre and the frozen periphery lies a ring of chaotic, slushy ice that marks the ultimate boundary of habitability. In this tumultuous region, the water is neither fully liquid nor entirely solid, existing in a state of perpetual grinding transformation. It is a world of colossal ice flows and freezing slush, where the relentless heat of the day side battles the absolute zero of the night side. Colossal bergs are born here, calving from the edges of the global ice shell and drifting inward toward the warmth of the substellar point. The constant movement of these frozen masses creates a landscape of shifting channels and crushing pressure, a dynamic ring that never finds rest. This region serves as a vital thermal buffer, absorbing the shock of the temperature gradient and protecting the liquid centre. If we were to stand on these moving flows, we would hear the deep, resonant groan of a planet trying to reconcile two impossible worlds. The ocean literally ends in a wall of frozen white, a final and absolute frontier that marks the edge of the known world. Exploration would be limited by the freezing point of water, creating a civilization that is geographically imprisoned by its own sun. Notice how your own breath flows easily in a world where the horizon always promises a new day, unlike the static doom of these frozen borders. To sail on such a world is to navigate a shrinking circle of survival, always conscious of the wall of ice waiting just beyond the twilight. The atmosphere above these divided worlds participates in a dramatic physical struggle to maintain its very existence against the extreme temperature gradients. Above the day side, the air is superheated and expands outward with immense pressure, forming a bulging dome of gas that reaches toward the star. Conversely, the atmosphere on the night side faces the constant risk of collapsing entirely into frozen frost upon the lightless ground. If the planet is not sufficiently large or its atmosphere not thick enough, the air could literally freeze out on the dark hemisphere, leaving the day side a vacuum. This delicate balance of pressure and temperature keeps the world alive, as the gas acts as a global heat transfer fluid. The winds generated by this expansion and contraction are not mere breezes, but a relentless, planet-wide exhale that moves with terrifying velocity. It is a lung that never inhales, a one-way street of atmospheric pressure that defines the boundaries of the sky and the limits of the habitable air. Surprisingly, the depths of the planet's interior may provide a secret highway for the distribution of vital thermal energy. Deep underwater currents, driven by the intense heat of the substellar point, might still circulate beneath the massive night-side ice shell. These hidden rivers of warmth carry the star's energy into the darkest, most isolated reaches of the planet, preventing the total stagnation of the global ocean. This process creates a hidden biosphere beneath the ice, a dark world where life could exist in the total absence of sunlight. The heat from the day side acts as a pump, forcing warm, nutrient-rich water into the frozen abyss and maintaining a liquid layer miles beneath the surface. Allow your mind to drift like these currents, feeling the deep, silent peace of an environment protected from the surface's violent storms. This internal circulation is the final defense against the total freezing of the planet, a secret pulse of life in the dark heart of a divided world. These ocular worlds represent a profound challenge to our deeply ingrained Earth-centric views of what a healthy, life-supporting planet must look like. We are accustomed to a world of global seasons and uniform habitability, yet these eyeball planets prove that life could potentially flourish in highly localized extreme environments. They suggest that the universe is far more creative in its design of habitable zones than our local experience would ever imply. A planet does not need to spin to be fertile, it only needs to maintain the delicate boundary between fire and ice. This realization expands the search for alien life to millions of worlds previously dismissed as too harsh or too strange. We must learn to see the beauty in these static, divided realms, recognizing them as stable and enduring homes for biology. Feel the ground beneath you, a single part of a vast and diverse cosmic collection of homes, each with its own rhythm. It is a lesson in humility, teaching us that our spinning home is just one way the cosmos supports the spark of consciousness. The extreme temperature gradients between the two hemispheres inevitably forge massive, permanent weather systems that are completely alien to our own flickering storms. Because the heat source never moves and the cold sink never warms, the resulting winds and pressure systems become geological features in their own right. They are not passing events, but eternal characteristics of the landscape, howling with the same unyielding persistence as the gravity that created them. This structure of wind and cloud does not dissipate after a few days, but remains fixed in place for millions of years, carving the rocky surface into unique shapes. The weather on an eyeball planet is a landscape you can map, a geography of rain and wind that is as solid as any mountain range. It is the ultimate expression of tidal locking, a world where even the sky has been tamed into a state of absolute unchanging order. The storm becomes the horizon, and the wind becomes the path, leading forever toward the center of the unmoving star. This unchanging order reaches its most exquisite and fragile expression at the thin geometric line that separates the world's two impossible extremes. Known to astronomers as the terminator, this boundary is the literal edge of light, a place where the unmoving star is pinned forever against the distant horizon. It is a world of perpetual twilight, painted in endless vivid shades of burnt orange, deep violet, and bruised indigo. Because the planet does not rotate, this twilight is not a fleeting moment of transition, but a permanent geographic feature that spans the entire circumference of the globe. The clouds here do not drift from day into night, they are held in a state of constant glowing suspension. It is a landscape defined by the eternal struggle between the searing heat of the substellar point and the absolute hungry cold of the dark hemisphere. This line represents the ultimate threshold of the planet's atmospheric and thermal systems, where the energy of the star is finally balanced by the chilling vacuum of the void. To cross this line is to step between two different universes, moving from a realm of blinding permanence into one of infinite shadow. It is the most vital coordinate on a locked world, the only place where the celestial geometry allows for a gentler, more recognizable reality to emerge. Within this narrow, encircling band, the planet offers a hidden sanctuary for the possibility of life that is otherwise denied by the harshness of the primary hemispheres. For many tidally locked worlds orbiting close to their red dwarf hosts, the dayside is a scorched, sterilized desert, where the unyielding radiation makes biological survival an impossibility. The night side, conversely, is a lightless tomb of frozen gases and brittle rock, far too cold for the delicate chemistry of existence to function. However, the Terminator Zone provides a rare ribbon of refuge where the thermal intensity is perfectly mitigated by its proximity to the darkness. Here, the energy from the star arrives at a glancing low angle, losing its destructive power while still providing enough warmth to sustain a stable environment. It is a temperate oasis caught between a furnace and a freezer, a thin, circular habitable zone that wraps around the planet like a vibrant, verdant ring. This sanctuary exists because the atmosphere acts as a massive thermal radiator, carrying heat away from the bright centre and dropping it just as it reaches the edge of the shadow. This localized stability creates a region where the conditions for liquid water and biological complexity can persist for billions of years without interruption. It is a magnificent proof that even the most extreme celestial environments can harbour pockets of profound, enduring gentleness. Surprisingly, The landscape of this twilight zone is dominated by a visual phenomenon that would feel deeply uncanny to any terrestrial traveller. Because the star is locked in its position, it rests eternally on the horizon, neither rising to warm the zenith nor sinking to invite the stars. This stationary posture creates a world of infinitely long dramatic shadows that stretch across the jagged rocky plains like dark unmoving fingers. Every mountain peak, every canyon wall, and every twisted alien tree casts a silhouette that remains fixed in the exact same orientation for the entire life of the planet. These shadows do not grow or shrink with the passage of hours. They are permanent geological landmarks that define the very shape of the terrain. The light is always amber, always low, and always coming from the same singular point in the vast, unchanging sky. This structure of eternal twilight serves a vital purpose by maintaining temperatures that could remain perfectly, almost eerily stable across vast geological epochs. On a spinning world like ours, life must constantly adapt to the wild thermal swings of the day-night cycle and the shifting tilt of the seasons. On a locked world, the terminator zone experiences no such fluctuations as the heat input from the horizon. Sun is absolutely constant and unyielding. This profound thermal consistency allows liquid water to pool and flow in stable, long-term cycles that are never interrupted by a freeze or a boil. Great rivers could carve through the twilight landscape, fed by the melting edges of the dark side glaciers and warmed by the distant crimson glow. These waters would not experience the evaporation cycles of a high noon sun, but would instead exist in a state of quiet, permanent flow. Such an environment is perhaps the most stable laboratory for the evolution of life in the entire universe. Without the stress of changing temperatures, biological organisms could refine their chemistry with a level of precision that is impossible in more chaotic systems. It is a world of incredible climatic reliability, where the very concept of a weather forecast is replaced by a permanent map of the local temperature. Deep within the atmosphere of this twilight band, life would be forced to contend with the ferocious, relentless planetary winds that howl overhead. As the hot air from the sunlit centre races toward the freezing night side to find equilibrium, it creates a high-altitude jet stream of terrifying velocity. While the surface of the Terminator might be temperate, the sky above is a chaotic river of gas moving with the power of a permanent hurricane. Any life forms evolving in this region would likely remain extremely close to the ground, developing low, aerodynamically efficient profiles to avoid being swept away by the gales. Plants might grow horizontally along the rocky ground, or anchor themselves deep into the bedrock with complex iron-hard root systems. There would be no towering forests of thin, swaying trees. Instead, the landscape would be one of dense, sprawling ground cover and shielded subterranean colonies. If we were to look closer, we might see creatures with wide, heavy bodies and multiple sets of sturdy limbs designed to grip the surface against the unyielding wind. Every biological design would be a response to the mechanical pressure of the air, a testament to the power of a world that is constantly exhaling its heat. The beauty of this zone is found in its resilience, where the fragility of life is protected by a geometry of low, sturdy permanence. The fundamental requirements for photosynthesis in the Terminator zone would produce flora that looks strikingly different from the vibrant greens of our terrestrial forests. Because the star hangs so low on the horizon, its light must pass through a much thicker layer of the planet's atmosphere, filtering out shorter wavelengths and leaving only a deep, saturated red. To capture this dim, low-energy light, the plants of this region might evolve incredibly dark, broad leaves that are nearly black in appearance. Take a moment to relax your muscles, letting the heavy, reliable pull of the earth remind you of the physical constraints that shape every living thing. In this twilight realm, the very colour of life is a reflection of the star's distant crimson ember. The deep purples and charcoals of the alien foliage would create a forest of shadows, a silent and efficient garden growing in the unmoving light of a perpetual evening. Imagine walking through a dense alien forest where the sun never climbs higher, or sinks lower than the distant, twisted tree line. The trunks of these trees would be gnarled and thick, leaning slightly away from the unyielding wind while their broad, dark crowns are frozen in a permanent reach for the horizon. The light filtering through the canopy would never change its angle, creating a network of long golden shafts that stay pinned to the forest floor like solid pillars of light. The forest floor would be a patchwork of permanent light and permanent shadow, where some mosses grow in eternal brilliance while others dwell in a forever shaded hollow. It is a place of profound stillness and deep, unchanging mystery, where the very air seems to hold its breath. This forest is a living museum of the tidal lock, a place where the biological world has perfectly mirrored the unmoving celestial geometry of its sun. Navigation in the Terminator Zone would be remarkably simple and intuitive for any creature or traveller moving across the twilight landscape. Because the star is pinned to one specific point on the horizon, it acts as an unmoving natural compass point that is visible from almost anywhere in the habitable band. Notice the simple, reliable orientation of your own space, even as the Earth spins and the stars wheel overhead in their nightly dance. On a locked world, this orientation is absolute and eternal, a gift of the tidal lock that simplifies the very nature of movement. The sun is not a passing visitor in the sky, but a permanent landmark, a fixed and guiding light that anchors every journey within the twilight ring. Travelling across the entire circumference of such a planet would reveal that this narrow strip of habitability forms a continuous, vibrant ring around the globe. This verdant circle is the only part of the world where life can truly flourish, a thin ribbon of biology caught between two vast and hostile wastelands. It is as if the planet has been encircled by a single, massive ecosystem that stretches for thousands of miles without ever encountering a change in season. Because the conditions are so stable along the entire length of the Terminator, migratory species could travel around the world forever without ever experiencing a change in climate. They would move through a perpetual autumn or a never-ending spring, always staying within the specific temperature band that suits their biology. The global ring acts as a highway for life, a continuous circuit of water, air and energy that connects every part of the habitable zone. If we were to look at the planet from space, this ring might appear as a faint glowing band of deep colour between the white ice of the night and the scorched brown of the day. It is the signature of a world that has been perfectly sorted by the force of gravity into a singular, circular garden. This ring is the heart and lungs of the planet, a unified biological engine that sustains itself in the narrowest of margins. Every seasonal cycle, driven by the tilt and orbit of a spinning world, is entirely replaced on these planets by pure, unmoving geography. To experience a different climate, you do not wait for the months to pass. You simply walk toward or away from the light of the horizon sun. A journey of a few dozen miles toward the day side might take you from a cool, temperate meadow into a searing, dry savanna. Conversely, moving toward the night side would lead you into a world of deepening frost and thickening ice, where the stars finally begin to outshine the dying glow of the sun. The weather is not a function of time, but a function of location, fixed permanently into the terrain like the mountains and the valleys. You can choose your season by choosing your coordinate, living in a permanent summer or a forever winter simply by moving your home. This total collapse of temporal cycles into spatial ones is the final, grand consequence of a world that has stopped its independent rotation. The planet offers a menu of climates that are always available, always in the same place, and always at the same intensity. It is the ultimate expression of a world tamed by order, where the environment is no longer a chaotic variable, but a stable and predictable map. This predictable map of static temperatures is held together by a desperate and violent balance that defines the very survival of the world. A tidally locked planet must find a physical mechanism to reconcile the unbearable, focused radiation of its day side with the absolute lightless chill of its night side. Without a way to transport this immense energy, the two hemispheres would drift into such uninhabitable extremes that the atmosphere itself might eventually collapse or boil away into space. This tension creates a planetary-scale engine designed to move heat across the unmoving face of the globe, ensuring that the dark hemisphere receives just enough warmth to maintain its gaseous shell. It is a system that thrives on the impossible, turning the static geometry of the orbit into a dynamic and life-sustaining exchange of energy that never rests. Surprisingly, the universe uses this extreme temperature difference to power the most stable and enduring weather systems in the entire galaxy. If we were to look closer, we would see that the very stillness of the rotation is exactly what powers this relentless, planet-wide struggle for thermal equilibrium. Nature solves this immense thermal imbalance through the creation of high-speed atmospheric rivers that act as the primary conduits for energy. These are not gentle breezes or seasonal winds, but colossal high-pressure corridors of gas that roar through the sky with a singular, unyielding purpose. They weave through the heavens like invisible veins, carrying the excess energy of the stationary star away from the scorched substellar point and delivering it to the freezing wastes of the dark hemisphere. This constant movement ensures that no part of the planet is truly isolated from the heat of its host, even if that heat is delivered second-hand through the rushing air. The high-altitude winds act as a thermal bridge, equalizing the pressure between two worlds that should, by all rights, be completely incompatible. It is a spectacular demonstration of how fluid dynamics can overcome the rigid constraints of a locked orbit to sustain life. Superrotation occurs when the atmosphere moves much faster than the planet itself, creating violent jet streams that whip around the equator at staggering velocities. On a world that spins slowly or not at all, the air is freed from the heavy, anchoring drag of the planetary body, allowing it to accelerate to speeds that would be impossible on Earth. These equatorial jet streams form a high-speed belt of wind that encircles the planet, providing a permanent and reliable highway for the distribution of heat and moisture. This structure of wind acts as a kinetic shield, a moving wall of gas that helps to stabilize the climate against the extreme gradients of the two hemispheres. The super-rotating air can complete a full circuit of the planet in a fraction of the time it takes the planet to complete its orbit, creating a disconnect between the ground and the sky. It is a brilliant example of how the laws of physics find loopholes to create motion even in a state of tidal capture. If we were to look closer, we would see that this equatorial jet is the spine of the world's weather, holding the disparate climates together in a single unified system. The sheer force of this movement is a testament to the power of gravity to drive atmospheric motion through thermal inequality. It is a world where the sky is always in a hurry, even if the land below is perfectly still. Hot air at the brightest point of the day side, known as the substellar point, rises high into the upper atmosphere and rushes urgently toward the dark hemisphere. This is a massive vertical updraft powered by the focused and never-ending glare of the star, creating a column of rising gas that never collapses or wavers. Once it reaches the upper reaches of the sky, the air is pushed outward by the constant arrival of new, superheated gases from below, forcing it to spill over into the freezing night side. This movement is the beginning of the planet's primary circulation loop, a grand atmospheric arch that bridges the gap between the two impossible halves of the world. The rising air carries with it the moisture and heat of the day side, acting as the primary engine for the global distribution of life-giving energy. It is a spectacular and unyielding vertical river of gas that defines the meteorological heart of the world, never ceasing for a single second of the planet's long life. Surprisingly, the universe uses this simple rise and fall of air to build a complex global plumbing system that prevents the star-facing side from simply melting away. The heat is not allowed to pool. It is caught in the vertical draft and hurled toward the shadows. It is a relentless, gravity-driven exhaling of energy that keeps the world from tipping into a thermal catastrophe. Upon reaching the night side, this air cools rapidly in the lightless void, sinks toward the ground and races back toward the day side along the frozen surface. This return journey is a heavy, chilling flow that hugs the terrain, carrying the profound cold of the dark hemisphere back to the sun-baked deserts to be warmed once more. It creates a perpetual loop of exchange, a low-level wind that scours the rocky plains and frozen mountains as it completes its planetary circuit. This surface wind is often far denser and more powerful than the high-altitude currents, acting as a relentless, invisible river that defines the weather of the lowlands. It moves with a heavy, purposeful momentum, pushing against the mountains and carving paths through the ice as it seeks the warmth of the dayside. It is the silent, cold inhale of the planet, the necessary counterpart to the fiery exhale of the substellar point. Notice how your body settles into the steady, unchanging support of the ground beneath you, much like the heavy, cold air that clings to the dark side of these unmoving worlds. The planet is always in motion, even if it does not spin, as the air itself takes on the burden of the journey. Every molecule of gas is a traveller in this endless cycle of warming and cooling that defines the locked world. The roar of this continuous cycle performs a vital and life-saving function by preventing the night side's atmosphere from freezing solid and falling to the ground as snow. Without this constant influx of warm air from the dayside, the pressure on the dark hemisphere would drop so low that the very air would crystallize and precipitate into miles-thick blankets of ice. The wind is the only thing keeping the atmosphere in a gaseous state, ensuring that the planet remains a cohesive world rather than a dead, vacuum-sealed rock. If we were to look closer, we would see that the very existence of the sky is a product of this movement. The wind is the pulse of the planet's life, a constant reminder that the universe favours the dynamic over the static. It is a world that stays alive by refusing to be still, even as it is captured by the gravity of its star. Such global winds could easily reach supersonic speeds, carving the rocky landscape into bizarre, windswept formations that look like frozen ripples in the stone. These gales act as a persistent, high-pressure sandblaster, smoothing mountains into aerodynamic domes and hollowing out deep, elongated canyons with a relentless, invisible force. Over millions of years, the topography of the planet is reshaped to fit the path of the wind, creating a world where the very mountains are born from the howl of the air. These formations are permanent geological markers of the wind's power, standing as unmoving testaments to the strength of a storm that has never ceased for a single second. The landscape itself becomes an aerodynamic map, a physical record of the atmospheric currents that have scoured the world since its birth. To walk among these rocks would be to see the invisible hands of the atmosphere at work, moulding the planet into a shape that offers the least resistance to the gale. This erosion is not a slow, gentle process, but a high-speed carving that happens on a global scale. The wind does not just move through the world, it defines the world's physical reality, turning the stone into a reflection of the sky. It is a world of hard, polished surfaces and streamlined peaks, all leaning in the direction of the eternal wind. Picture a thick cloud cover being dragged continuously across the terminator, glowing with the friction of the eternal storm and the light of the low sun. As the moisture-laden air from the dayside hits the cold barrier of the twilight zone, it condenses into massive, roiling clouds that are whipped along by the high-altitude jets. The sheer speed of this movement, combined with the extreme temperature transitions, can produce static discharges and frictional heating that paint the clouds in eerie electric hues. This constant parade of glowing clouds forms a ring of light and energy that encircles the planet, a visible sign of the violent exchange happening between the two hemispheres. The clouds act as a thermal blanket, trapping just enough heat to keep the terminator temperate, while moving too fast to ever settle or dissipate. It is a sky of permanent lightning and eternal movement, where the transition from light to dark is marked by a glowing, electric barrier. As you feel the calm, steady pace of your own thoughts, imagine the chaotic, high-energy beauty of a sky that is always in motion, yet always remains in the same place. The clouds are a permanent feature of the geography, as reliable as the mountains or the oceans. They are the visible pulse of the wind, a glowing ribbon of moisture that marks the boundary of the habitable world. Dust from the dry, sun-baked deserts of the dayside would be carried continuously into the frozen night, settling on the ice like dark, gritty snow. This process creates a landscape of black glaciers and soot-covered mountains, where the pristine white of the water ice is buried under layers of silicate and iron particulates. This dark snow actually helps the night side retain some of the meagre heat it receives, as the darkened surface absorbs more infrared radiation than clean, reflective ice. Over geological time, these layers of dust build up into massive dark deposits that can be seen from space, marking the path of the winds that carry them. It is a world where the weather physically moves the surface of the planet from one side to the other, creating a dark, frozen reflection of the sun-scorched deserts. The ice is not clean. It is a repository of the planet's history, a record of every dust storm that has ever crossed the Terminator. This gritty snow defines the ecology of the night side, providing minerals and nutrients to any life that might exist beneath the frozen crust. The wind acts as a global conveyor, moving the building blocks of chemistry from the bright world into the dark. It is a cycle of physical matter that mirrors the cycle of energy, connecting the two hemispheres in a shared, dusty destiny. It is a system of absolute order born from violent energy, proving that even in the stillness of a locked rotation, the universe finds a way to move and breathe. This relentless, howling pulse is the final, grand mechanism that allows a tidally locked world to exist as a unified, stable entity in the face of an impossible divide. The wind is the breath of the planet, a permanent and powerful sign that even the most captured world is still very much alive. Surprisingly, the very force that stopped the world from spinning is what provides the energy for this atmospheric heart to beat. The tidal lock is not an end, but a new beginning, a shift from the energy of rotation to the energy of circulation. It is the final victory of order over chaos, a world where every gust of wind has its place in the grand, predictable map of the cosmos. This final victory of order over chaos finds its most magnificent expression within the towering gravitational wells of our solar system's gas giants. The massive gravity of giants like Jupiter and Saturn acts as a supreme governing force, systematically subduing the independent rotations of nearly all their major orbiting moons. Over the long eons of the solar system's infancy, these colossal planets exerted an inescapable influence, pulling and dragging on their satellites until a perfect synchronization was achieved. This gravitational mastery ensures that the local neighborhood of a giant planet is not a chaotic swarm of spinning rocks, but a highly organized and predictable architecture of captured worlds. As these moons travel through the deep, radiation-filled vacuum, they are held in a rigid, unyielding alignment that defies the typical independent motion of smaller celestial bodies. The sheer scale of the giant planets makes this locking process virtually inevitable, transforming their moons into permanent observers of the gas-shrouded masters they serve. Deep within the intense magnetic environment of the Jovian system, the four largest moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, exist in a state of eternal, unblinking focus. Known as the Galilean satellites, these massive worlds all keep one ancient, scarred face permanently turned toward the swirling, multicolored storms of Jupiter. From their perspective, the king of planets never sets, hanging as a gargantuan banded sphere that dominates their entire sky and exerts a constant crushing pressure. This permanent orientation has remained unchanged for millions of centuries, even as Jupiter's great red spot has raged and shifted across the gas giant's clouds. While the stars and distant planets wheel and drift behind them, these moons remain locked in their specific assigned perspectives. The side of Europa that faces the Jovian abyss sees a world of terrifying scale and power, while its hidden far side looks out into the cold, silent depths of the outer solar system. Such a rigid alignment creates a unique environmental dichotomy on each moon, where the radiation and gravitational tug are forever localized to specific hemispheres. This unvarying gaze is the foundation of their identity, a physical manifestation of the absolute authority Jupiter holds over its sprawling kingdom. They are the primary audience to a celestial drama that never ends, caught in a permanent front-row seat to the most powerful storms in the local cosmos. Because these captured moons maintain slightly elliptical orbits, the gravitational relationship is not static, but characterized by a rhythmic mechanical pulsing. As a moon glides slightly closer to and then farther away from its parent giant, the intensity of the gravitational pull fluctuates with mathematical precision. This variation forces the entire planetary body to physically stretch and compress, flexing the cold rock and deep ice as if they were made of soft, pliable rubber. If we were to look closer, we would witness a world being literally kneaded by the invisible hands of gravity, its very bedrock groaning under the strain of continuous deformation. This physical distortion is not merely a surface effect. It penetrates deep into the core, shifting trillions of tons of material with every single orbital circuit. The moon is trapped in a cycle of expansion and contraction that never allows its interior to find a state of true, unyielding stillness. Surprisingly, the universe uses this mechanical stress to transform a cold, dead satellite into a dynamic, living entity. The constant flexing acts as a perpetual source of kinetic energy, ensuring that the interior of the world remains warm despite its great distance from the sun. It is a spectacular demonstration of how tidal locking, combined with an imperfectly circular path, can breathe life into the very stone of a celestial body. This constant rhythmic flexing generates immense internal friction, a destructive and creative process that scientists identify as tidal heating. As the layers of rock and ice rub against one another during the moon's deformation, the mechanical energy is converted directly into thermal energy deep within the mantle. This subterranean grinding produces enough heat to liquefy stone and melt vast quantities of ice, creating a subterranean furnace powered entirely by the moon's orbital motion. Tidal heating is the engine of the outer solar system, providing a heat source that is completely independent of the faint, distant light of the sun. It allows worlds that should be frozen, inert chunks of rock to maintain liquid interiors and active geological cycles. This process is a testament to the hidden power of gravity, proving that a planet's influence can reach far beneath the surface of its companions. Notice how your own body remains warm and vital even in the cool air, a biological parallel to the internal fires that gravity stokes within these locked satellites. The friction is a persistent, invisible flame, fueled by the same force that keeps the moon's face turned toward its master. It is a beautiful irony that the force which stops a world from spinning also provides the energy to keep its heart beating. For the innermost major moon, Io, this trapped internal heat reaches a level of ferocity that is unmatched anywhere else in the planetary neighbourhood. The tidal forces exerted by Jupiter and the neighbouring moons are so intense that Io's interior is effectively a boiling cauldron of molten sulphur and silicate rock. This immense pressure fuels hundreds of active volcanoes that continuously erupt, spewing plumes of sulphurous gas and lava hundreds of miles into the surrounding vacuum. Io is the most intensely geologically active body in the solar system, a world that is literally turning itself inside out due to the relentless kneading of Jovian gravity. Its surface is a vibrant, ever-changing tapestry of yellow, orange and black, as fresh lava flows constantly overwrite the ancient impact craters. The moon is in a state of perpetual self-immolation, driven by the violent energy of its tidal lock. This volcanic activity is so profound that it leaves a visible trail of ionized gas in Jupiter's orbit, a glowing torus of material stripped from the moon's atmosphere. It is a stark reminder that tidal locking can be a source of extreme, chaotic energy rather than just silent stillness. Io stands as a blazing monument to the transformative power of gravity, a world that refuses to be cold or quiet. On the icy worlds of Europa and Enceladus, the exact same tidal forces perform a more hidden, yet potentially life-sustaining kind of alchemy. The internal friction generated by their locked orbits provides enough warmth to melt the lower layers of their thick frozen shells from the bottom up. This process sustains vast, dark oceans of liquid water that remain pressurized and insulated beneath miles of scarred shifting ice. Sensory focus. The terrifying groan of shifting ice miles above a hidden pressurized ocean. Deep within these worlds, the sounds of the tidal lock are audible as the massive ice plates creak and snap under the strain of the shifting gravitational pull. The ice crust acts as a protective shield, sealing in a world of liquid dark where the chemistry of life could potentially flourish far from the sun's rays. These hidden seas are perhaps the most promising environments for alien biology in our entire solar system. If we were to look closer, we would see that the surfaces of these moons are crisscrossed by long, red-stained fractures where the internal ocean has seeped upward and frozen. These cracks are the scars of a world that is being pulled apart and pushed back together by the giant planet next door. It is a landscape defined by the constant, agonizing tension between the liquid heart and the frozen skin. Without the specific combination of tidal locking and the resulting orbital resonance between the moons, these deep subsurface oceans would have frozen solid billions of years ago. The moons of Jupiter are caught in a mathematical relationship where their orbital periods are simple multiples of one another, ensuring that they pass each other at regular, predictable intervals. This resonance keeps their orbits slightly elliptical, providing the constant change in distance required to drive the tidal heating process. If the moons had circularized their paths and stopped their internal flexing, the subterranean furnaces would have eventually sputtered out, leaving the liquid water to turn into unyielding ice. The entire history of these worlds would have been one of static, frozen silence, with no possibility for internal chemistry or complex geological movement. The tidal lock is the anchor that allows this delicate, resonant dance to persist across the vast reaches of geological time. It is a magnificent example of celestial fine-tuning, where gravity acts as both the conductor and the power source for a multi-billion-year performance. The preservation of these liquid environments is a direct consequence of the way the giant planet manages the energy of its satellite system. We are only now beginning to realize how much of the solar system's habitability depends on these invisible, gravitational connections. Notice how the same invisible force that stops a moon from spinning also provides the critical energy to keep its interior alive and active. This dual nature of tidal locking is one of the most profound paradoxes in planetary science, where the removal of rotational energy is compensated for by the injection of tidal heat. The moon loses its independent day-night cycle, but gains a permanent internal battery that can power its geology for the entire life of the star. Feel the quiet stability of your own resting form, supported by the very planet that provides everything you need to survive. In the same way, these moons are supported and energized by the giants they orbit, finding a different kind of vitality in their state of capture. They are not dead rocks, but vibrant shifting spheres that use their lack of spin to fuel a much deeper and more enduring internal motion. This realization changes our understanding of the universe's potential for harboring life, as it decouples habitability from the presence of sunlight. A world can be plunged into the deepest, coldest shadows of the outer solar system and still maintain a warm, liquid environment through the power of its gravitational bond. The lock is not a sign of decay, but a mechanism for long-term survival in the face of the encroaching cold. Saturn's largest moon, Titan, offers a unique variation on this theme, safely maintaining a thick, smoggy atmosphere while being securely locked to its ringed parent. Despite the intense tidal forces and the lack of a rapid rotation, Titan has managed to hold onto a gaseous envelope that is even denser than the atmosphere of the Earth. It is a world of orange hazes and liquid methane lakes, existing in a state of perpetual synchronized twilight. The tidal lock ensures that the atmospheric circulation on Titan is dominated by the slow, steady pull of Saturn, creating weather patterns that are remarkably stable over centuries. Because the Moon does not spin independently, the large-scale winds follow a predictable path determined by the fixed orientation of the Moon to its sun and host. It is a spectacular example of a complex active world that thrives under the conditions of gravitational capture. If we were to look closer, we would see that Titan's surface is shaped by the same slow-motion atmospheric rivers that define other locked worlds, moving the methane rains across a frozen landscape of water-ice mountains. The Moon is a dark chemical laboratory, where the rules of life and weather are rewritten by the presence of a massive nearby giant. It stands as proof that tidal locking does not necessarily mean the loss of a world's complex gaseous identity. These synchronized satellites form complex miniature solar systems of their own, dancing in strict gravitational time with their massive gas-shrouded hosts. Each giant planet acts as a central sun for its family of moons, dictating their movements, their internal temperatures, and the very chemistry of their surfaces. It is a highly ordered and predictable hierarchy that mirrors the structure of the larger solar system, but operates on a much tighter and more intimate scale. The tidal lock is the fundamental law of these miniature systems, ensuring that the satellites operate as a single, integrated unit, rather than a collection of independent bodies. This synchronization creates a level of stability that allows for the long-term preservation of subsurface oceans and active volcanoes across billions of years. It is a world of absolute order, born from the initial chaos of the solar system's formation. As you let the immense scale of these systems fill your mind, appreciate the silent mathematical grace of their eternal locked orbits. The gas giants and their moons are a testament to the power of gravity to organize and sustain life in the furthest reaches of the dark. They are the final, magnificent proof that the universe always finds a way to move, even when it has stopped spinning. While the dominant theme of gravitational interaction often involves a gargantuan host subduing a smaller satellite, the cosmos occasionally produces a more egalitarian arrangement where two celestial bodies manage to lock each other. This phenomenon, known as mutual tidal locking, represents the ultimate expression of gravitational symmetry, occurring when the masses and orbital distances of two partners reach a specific, delicate equilibrium. Instead of a single world surrendering its independent spin to a master, both participants bleed away their rotational energy through internal friction until their faces are permanently, reciprocally fixed. This is not a relationship of capture, but of mutual surrender, where the frantic early energies of both worlds are discarded in favour of a shared, synchronized rhythm. It is a rare state of total cosmic integration, found only when the gravitational influence of the smaller body is strong enough to exert a significant braking force on its larger partner. In this balanced waltz, the distinction between planet and moon begins to blur, as both bodies become equal participants in a singular unmoving system. Pluto and its largest moon, Charon, represent the solar system's most pristine and perfect example of this rare mutual tidal locking. Orbiting in the freezing lightless suburbs of the Kuiper Belt, these two icy spheres have spent billions of years resolving their internal orbital tensions into a state of absolute reciprocal stillness. Unlike our moon, which still allows the Earth to spin beneath its gaze, Charon has successfully brought Pluto's own rotation to a complete matching halt. They do not merely orbit one another, they participate in a perfectly synchronized waltz where every single rotational step is mirrored by the other across the void. This relationship was forged in the deep time of the outer solar system, where the lack of solar heat allowed the icy crust to maintain their structural integrity while being kneaded by gravity. They stand as a testament to the fact that even at the very edge of our neighbourhood, the laws of physics are working tirelessly to bring objects into a state of perfect, unmoving order. The physical mechanics behind this relationship are driven by the fact that these two worlds are remarkably close in physical size and mass compared to any other pairing in our system. Because Charon possesses roughly 1/8 the mass of Pluto, their shared centre of mass actually lies in the empty, freezing space between them rather than deep within the larger body. This creates a unique orbital geometry, where the two worlds seem to chase one another around an invisible central point in the vacuum, rather than one world circling the other. It is a spectacular demonstration of orbital balance, where the gravity of the Moon is significant enough to pull the planet itself into a wider, more dramatic circle. As you breathe in the quiet air of your own environment, consider how even the empty space between worlds can hold the secret to their entire physical destiny. This shared centre of mass acts as a silent, invisible pivot point for their entire existence, anchoring them in a relationship of perfect geometric equality. In this state of total synchronization, Charon always shows the exact same face to Pluto, and Pluto always shows the exact same face to Charon. It is a dual, unchanging gaze that has persisted since the dawn of their relationship, effectively turning the two separate worlds into a single, rigid system. There are no shifting landscapes to discover, and no hidden horizons to peek around from the surface of either body. Their geographies are permanently mapped onto one another across the divide. This mutual lock ensures that the same craters, nitrogen glaciers, and dark tholins are always visible across the space between them, never once slipping out of sight. It creates a sense of profound geological intimacy, where the two worlds are forced into a permanent, unblinking confrontation with one another's features. This is the ultimate conclusion of tidal evolution, where the chaotic motion of two individual bodies is finally resolved into a singular, unvarying portrait of stillness. If you were to stand on the specific hemisphere of Pluto that faces its moon, Charon would appear as a massive silver-white orb hanging absolutely motionless in the black star-strewn sky. It would never rise in the east or set in the west, nor would it ever move a single degree from its designated position above the horizon. Depending on your exact location on the surface, Charon might hang directly overhead like a giant icy eye, or it might be eternally pinned just above the jagged frozen mountains. This creates a sky that is fundamentally different from our own, where the moon is a permanent geological landmark rather than a wandering traveller. The moon's phases would still cycle as the sun's light hits it from different angles, but its position would remain as stable and reliable as the bedrock beneath your boots. It is the ultimate experience of celestial permanence, a world where the heavens refuse to turn and the primary light source is a fixed, unmoving presence in the dark. This binary dance creates a quiet and incredibly stable, gravitational relationship at the dark, freezing edge of our solar system, where the sun is merely a bright, distant point of light. In the Kuiper belt, the mutual lock acts as a powerful stabilizing anchor against the subtle perturbations of passing icy remnants and wandering comets. Because the two worlds move as a single unit, their joint gravitational field is much more resilient and predictable than that of two independent bodies. This stability has allowed the Pluto-Charon system to maintain its intricate family of 4 smaller moons in complex, stable orbits around the central pair. The mutual lock of the core worlds provides the gravitational foundation for an entire miniature solar system, a small oasis of absolute mathematical order. Notice the deep, undisturbed peace of your own resting form, a terrestrial echo of the absolute mathematical order that governs these distant icy companions. If we were to look closer at the physics binding these two worlds, we might visualize an invisible, unbreakable rod of gravitational force connecting their two centers. This tether forces them to spin slowly as a single dumbbell-shaped unit, moving through the void with a unified purpose that defies their status as separate spheres. The mechanics of this connection are so rigid that the rotation of the two individual bodies is completely indistinguishable from the orbital period of the system itself. They do not merely orbit, they rotate together as if they were joined by a physical structural beam, ensuring that no torsion or independent movement ever occurs. This dumbbell configuration is the most energy-efficient way for two nearby masses to exist in a shared gravitational field, representing the final triumph of order over kinetic chaos. It is a spectacular visual metaphor for the total integration of two worlds, where the independence of the individual is entirely sacrificed for the absolute stability of the collective. Such mutual locking represents the absolute ultimate end state of all orbital evolution, a terminal point where all excess rotational energy has been perfectly dissipated. It is the final destination for any celestial pair that has the time and proximity to resolve its internal frictions and gravitational tensions. On our own world, we are still billions of years away from such a state, as the Earth continues its long, slow deceleration under the Moon's persistent drag. However, in the case of Pluto and Charon, the journey is already complete. They have reached the quiet plateau of existence where no further energy can be lost and no further changes in rotation will occur. It is a state of profound entropic peace that can persist for the remainder of the star system's life, untroubled by the frantic energies that define younger, more chaotic pairings. By reaching this state, the two worlds have found a permanent sanctuary from the grinding friction that otherwise wears down the momentum of the universe. Surprisingly, the universe likely harbours many thousands of binary asteroids and rogue planetary pairs sharing this ultimate silent synchronization in the deep space between stars. These lost wandering systems are often the orphans of early solar system formation, ejected into the interstellar void during the violent migrations of giant planets. Yet, even in the absolute isolation of the galactic dark, they find a permanent and intimate stability in their mutual embrace, locked forever face to face. They drift through the lightless vacuum as silent, dual sentinels, forever staring into each other's eyes, while the rest of the universe spins on in its frantic, independent dance. These pairs represent a secret population of double-locked worlds, proving that the drive towards synchronization is a universal law that operates even in the furthest reaches of the empty dark. As you settle into the quiet of your own space, appreciate the thought of these distant binary pairs, finding their own version of a perfect, unmoving home in the infinite void. The quest for an unmoving home in the infinite void is a journey that every spinning world must eventually undertake, as the very rotation of a planet is not a permanent fixture, but a finite, decaying resource. Like a grand clockwork mechanism winding down over trillions of heartbeats, the kinetic energy of a planet's spin is slowly drained away by the relentless tides of gravity. This store of rotational momentum, once vast and chaotic, acts as a limited inheritance that is systematically spent throughout the lifespan of a celestial body. Every revolution is a payment made to the invisible ledger of thermodynamics, a slow bleed of motion that cannot be recovered. Deep within the structural history of any solar system, the frantic whirling of new worlds is destined to succumb to this subtle, entropic drag. The universe does not allow for perpetual motion in isolation. It demands a tribute of energy for every orbital dance performed in the dark. As this energy bleeds away, the planet moves closer to its inevitable state of rest, trading its youthful speed for the heavy stability of the lock. This is the fundamental truth of planetary life, where the frantic energy of the beginning is systematically exchanged for the heavy, enduring peace of the final locked state. It is a transition from the frantic heartbeat of a young world to the long, slow exhale of an ancient one. Surprisingly, our own world is currently caught in the middle of this long, invisible deceleration, though the 24-hour day feels like a fundamental and unchanging pillar of existence. Earth is still spinning with enough vigour to create the cycles of light and dark we depend upon, but its momentum is being stolen by the moon with every passing tide. This silent theft is happening right now, at this very moment, as the planetary rotation fights against the gravitational anchor of its faithful satellite. The massive bulge of our oceans, pulled by the moon, acts as a physical brake that drags against the rotation of the sea floor. If we were to look closer at the atomic clocks that measure our terrestrial time, we would find that the Earth is a lethargic traveller compared to its ancient self. The rotation is slowing by a tiny, almost imperceptible fraction of a second each year, a microscopic drag that accumulates over the eons. We live in a fleeting window of history where the pace of the world matches the requirements of our biology. Yet this balance is shifting even as we sleep. The very ground beneath us is subtly resisting the spin of the planet, a silent struggle between the motion of the Earth and the pull of the Moon. In the impossibly distant future, the ultimate conclusion of this terrestrial drag could lead to a state where the Earth's rotation matches the orbital period of the Moon exactly. This would result in a mutual tidal lock, a total synchronization where the two bodies face one another in an eternal, unmoving gaze across the dark. The Earth would no longer turn beneath the Moon's light. Instead, the Moon would hang permanently over one hemisphere, a silver guardian that never sets. This represents the final resting state of our local system, a silent and perfectly balanced architecture born from the death of independent motion. Notice the absolute stillness of your own resting limbs as you consider this far-off silent union of worlds. The inhabitants of such a future would experience a reality where half the globe is perpetually illuminated by lunar radiance, while the other half never witnesses a moonrise. This would be the end of the terrestrial day as we define it, replaced by a permanent geographical orientation to our satellite. It is the destination toward which every terrestrial day is currently marching, a quiet end to the frantic spinning of our planetary cradle. The waltz of the Earth and Moon will eventually resolve into a singular frozen embrace. Long before this mutual locking can reach its perfect mathematical completion, our dying sun will likely expand into a massive red giant and radically alter the gravitational dynamic of the inner solar system. This stellar transformation will swallow the inner planets and push the boundaries of the solar system's thermal and gravitational limits far beyond their current reach. The delicate ballet between the Earth and the Moon will be interrupted by the encroaching fires of a star reaching the end of its nuclear life. The expansion of the solar atmosphere will create a new kind of drag, one that could potentially spiral the Moon back toward the Earth in a final, violent reunion. As the Sun swells, the drag on Earth's orbit will intensify, potentially drawing the system into a fiery end before the clocks can truly stop. This cosmic interruption serves as a reminder that the path toward tidal stillness is often cut short by the larger life cycles of the stars themselves. The quest for equilibrium is a race against time, where the evolution of the host star dictates the final fate of the captured world. Even the most stable orbital relationships are subject to the violent whims of stellar death, proving that no lock is truly eternal in a universe of changing fires. It is a fascinating and humbling realization that the convenient, comfortable length of our terrestrial day is merely a temporary passing phase in the planet's incredibly long life. We perceive the 24-hour cycle as a cosmic constant, yet it is actually a specific and rare coordinate on a sliding scale of rotational decay. In the grand timeline of the Earth, this era of manageable days is a brief, flickering moment that will eventually be forgotten as the world continues to slow. The stability we enjoy is not a guarantee provided by the universe, but a lucky accident of our current position in the slowing of the clocks. If we were to view our history from a truly astronomical perspective, we would see a world that has been many different versions of itself, defined entirely by its changing speed. We are the children of a specific momentum, living out our lives in the narrow gap between a frantic past and a frozen future. This realization strips away the illusion of terrestrial permanence, revealing our world as a dynamic entity that is constantly shedding its energy into the void. The clocks are not just ticking, they are winding down, and we are merely the observers of a single beautiful moment in that long deceleration. Deep within the ancient record of the Hadean Aeon, the early Earth spun with a ferocity that would be unrecognizable to modern eyes. A single day lasted only a few brief hours, with the sun racing across the sky in a dizzying arc that left little time for the surface to cool. At the same time, the moon loomed massively in the heavens, appearing many times larger and brighter than it does today as it orbited at a fraction of its current distance. This was a world of high-velocity chaos, where the tides were massive, roaring walls of water that swept across the primordial crust with every fast-moving moonrise. Feel the heavy, reliable support of your bed or chair, a stillness that was impossible in that era of rapid, dervish-like spinning. The centrifugal force of that rapid rotation flattened the planet into a much more pronounced oblate spheroid, straining the very foundations of the cooling rock. It was a landscape of violent energy and flickering light, where the atmosphere was whipped into permanent gales by the speed of the world below. Our peaceful, 24-hour home is the product of billions of years of gravitational taming, a survivor of a much more aggressive and energetic youth. As the moon gradually receded and the Earth's spin slowed, the planet physically calmed, allowing for the emergence of complex ecosystems that could adapt to a longer, gentler rhythm. The reduction in centrifugal stress and the stabilization of the tides created a more predictable environment where biological life could begin its slow, intricate expansion. The lengthening of the day provided a steady cycle of energy that plants and animals could use to synchronize their internal chemical processes. This slowing was the essential prerequisite for the complexity of the biosphere, a necessary deceleration that provided the stability life required to flourish. The very architecture of life as we know it is a response to this gradual deceleration, a biological mirror of the slowing planetary top. Without this gravitational braking, the constant high-speed shifts in temperature and light might have prohibited the development of complex terrestrial organisms. The tidal lock of the moon was the catalyst for our tranquility, a mechanical gift that carved out a space for the slow, delicate work of evolution to proceed. We owe our existence to the friction of the tides, a force that turned a frantic, spinning rock into a stable and nurturing home. Consider the profound idea that biological life itself is heavily shaped and dictated by the specific rate at which a planet sheds its rotational momentum. Our circadian rhythms, the migration patterns of birds, and the blooming of flowers are all fine-tuned to the current, slowing heartbeat of the world. If the Earth were to slow down faster or stay at its youthful speed longer, every biological system on our world would be fundamentally altered or rendered impossible. We are woven into the physics of the orbit, our bodies acting as sensitive instruments that have adapted to the specific frequency of the Earth's current spin. This connection highlights the deep intimacy between the motion of the spheres and the quiet pulse of a living cell. The slowing of the clocks is not just an astronomical event, it is a biological foundation, the silent tempo to which all terrestrial existence is currently dancing. As you rest, your own internal rhythms are seeking a state of harmony with the world's rotation, a biological echo of the tidal forces that govern the heavens. We are the living expression of a planet's momentum, our very lives structured by the speed at which our world turns in the dark. Surprisingly, the universe offers a poetic and measurable sign of this process in every beautiful sunset we witness today, as each one is mathematically slightly longer than the ones experienced a century ago. Because the Earth's rotation has decelerated, the time it takes for the sun to cross the threshold of the horizon has increased by a tiny golden fraction of a second. This means that every evening is a unique, unrepeatable event that lasts longer than any that came before it in human history. This microscopic stretching of time is a physical manifestation of the moon's persistent, invisible drag on our world's momentum. Let your breath slow to match the stretching of these evening hours, feeling the gentle, rhythmic peace of a world that is taking its time. We are living through a period of expansion, where the light of the day is being slowly pulled toward its ultimate static conclusion. Each sunset is a quiet testament to the energy being transferred from our planet's spin into the moon's ever-widening orbit. It is a spectacular and silent exchange, a cosmic redistribution of energy that ensures every sunset is just a little bit more patient than the last. Ultimately, the universe functions like an immense, silent workshop that slowly unwinds all of these spinning planetary tops, converting their frantic motion into silent, vast orbital distance. The kinetic energy that once drove the rapid rotation of a world is not lost, but is carefully repurposed to push satellites further into the void, expanding the reach of the local system. This process is a grand entropic trade-off, where the local speed of a planet is sacrificed for the stability and scale of the wider orbit. It is a journey toward the ultimate stillness we see in the furthest reaches of the cosmos, a return to the equilibrium that gravity tirelessly demands. Every world in our system is a participant in this long winding down, moving toward a future where the concept of a day is replaced by a permanent orientation. The waltz of the stars is a slow downward spiral toward a state of perfect unmoving order, where all motion is finally resolved into the silent geometry of the lock. In this final state, the clocks do not stop. They simply cease to have any meaning in a universe that has found its rest. We are the witnesses to this grand unwinding, watching the universe trade its frantic speed for the majesty of the eternal unmoving void. The majesty of the eternal unmoving void is the silent conclusion to a grand narrative that encompasses every corner of the observable universe. This story is essentially a chronicle of the cosmos relentlessly seeking its lowest possible state of energy, a thermodynamic drive toward the ultimate floor of physical existence. Every spinning world, every tumbling asteroid, and every orbiting moon is participating in a systemic shedding of unnecessary tension through the slow, persistent drain of its rotational momentum. Energy, in its most kinetic and chaotic forms, is a restless guest in the architecture of space, and the laws of physics work tirelessly to dissipate this frantic motion. The universe smooths out the jagged edges of orbital speed until only the most efficient and stable configuration remains. Tidal locking is the physical manifestation of this universal desire for rest, a process that converts the exhausting labour of rotation into the effortless grace of a fixed and predictable path. It is as if the cosmos is slowly settling into a deep, comfortable chair after an eon of frenetic activity, trading its initial heat for a lasting stability. The dissipation of rotational energy is the final signature of a system that has finally found its energetic equilibrium, where the world no longer fights against gravity but flows perfectly within its invisible currents. This state represents the energetic ground state of an orbiting body, a place where no further work can be performed and no further heat can be lost. It is the quiet, final page of a book that has been billions of years in the making. This peaceful equilibrium highlights a beautiful and profound paradox where the incredible, grinding violence of gravity eventually produces a state of absolute, unshakable calm. To reach this stillness, a planet must first endure billions of years of internal upheaval, its very core being kneaded and heated by the unrelenting tug of its host. The rock must groan, the mantle must melt, and the crust must buckle under the immense pressure of tidal friction before the rotational energy is finally spent. It is a spectacular irony that such a serene outcome requires an initial epoch of such staggering physical and geological stress. Only through this intense, long-term labour can the world earn the right to its eternal unmoving posture in the dark, shedding its frantic youth for a quiet maturity. The path to silence is paved with the noise of tectonic plates grinding together and the roar of subterranean fires stoked by the planet's own deceleration. Surprisingly, the universe uses the most powerful and destructive forces at its disposal to sculpt a landscape of perfect, unchanging order. The same gravity that could tear a moon apart instead chooses to gently hold it in place, rewarding the sphere for surviving its turbulent and energetic youth. Once the last of the rotational friction has radiated away into the cold, a deep and resonant quiet settles over the world, a silence born from the total exhaustion of eons. This calm is not a lack of power, but the perfect containment of it, where every force is matched and balanced in the void. Deep within the sprawling reaches of every galaxy, millions of these silent, locked worlds are hidden. their faces forever frozen in a sharp and uncompromising divide of light and shadow. From the bustling centres of galactic clusters to the lonely stars at the very edge of the cosmic void, these static sentinels represent the dominant architectural feature of the heavens. They are the unblinking observers of the star-flecked dark, their geographies etched permanently into the binary reality of their orbits. Each one of these worlds is a study in ultimate contrast, hosting a hemisphere of permanent, unchanging noon and a hemisphere of infinite, lightless midnight. The Terminator line remains fixed like a geographical scar, a constant boundary between two impossible domains that never shift, blur, or fade. While we look out at the stars and see a tapestry of motion, the reality of the galactic population is one of stationary captured gazes. If we were to map the true state of the cosmos, we would find a vast graveyard of rotational energy, where countless spheres have found their final orientation. Notice the quiet rhythm of your own breath as you contemplate these millions of unmoving worlds, each one a testament to the inescapable power of synchronization. They form a silent congregation in the dark, held in a state of perpetual geometric grace that outlasts the flickering lives of the stars themselves. These locked worlds are the steady heartbeat of the galaxy, providing a silent foundation for the more frantic movements of younger spinning systems. If we were to widen our perspective beyond our local neighbourhood, we would see a universe populated largely by worlds that have already found their rest. The turning planet is a rarity, a high-energy exception in a sea of synchronized static stability. Stillness is the ultimate destiny of the sphere, the final destination toward which every bit of orbital debris is slowly but surely drifting over billions of years. This realization shifts our understanding of the universe from a place of constant motion to one of profound underlying quiet. A world can be millions of miles away from its host, separated by a gap that would swallow light for several seconds and still feel the unrelenting pressure to synchronize. The vacuum does not hinder this connection, but rather provides the perfect frictionless stage for the slow-motion drama of deceleration to unfold over eons. It is a long-distance relationship governed by the purest laws of attraction, where distance is merely a variable in the equation of gravitational capture. Consider the deep, undisturbed space between the stars, a realm where these invisible tethers are the only things that truly matter in the dark. Even in the lightless gaps where no gas or dust remains, the gravity of a massive body continues to whisper to its companions, urging them to find their rest. Your own body, resting here, is part of this same grand interconnectedness, a participant in the subtle, unseen pulls that hold the entire universe in a delicate balance. This silent operation across the void is a reminder that the most powerful forces are often those we cannot see or hear. These majestic mechanisms require no atmosphere to carry their influence, no oceans to generate friction, and no physical contact, only the relentless, inescapable warp of space-time itself. The locking process is a direct conversation between the mass of a star and the fabric of the universe, a manifestation of general relativity on a planetary scale. When a massive body sits in the dark, it curves the very geometry of space around it, creating a geometric well that its companions must navigate. As a moon or planet travels through this curved space, its own mass creates a secondary distortion that interacts with the primary warp of the host in a complex dance. This interaction is the source of the tidal forces that stretch the world and drain its energy, a purely geometric consequence of being a three-dimensional object in a four-dimensional reality. The tether is not a force in the traditional sense, but a natural result of moving along the path of least resistance in a warped and heavy environment. Surprisingly, the universe achieves this total synchronization through nothing more than the shape of space itself. It is the most elegant and minimal of systems, requiring no moving parts and no external power sources to bring a world to a complete and permanent halt. The warp is the law, and every world is a willing subject to the silent structural dictates of the cosmic grid. This geometric destiny is written into the very vacuum of space, ensuring that every world eventually finds its assigned and unmoving place. Even isolated and massive binary star systems will eventually lock to one another, spinning face to face as they slowly burn through their immense reserves of nuclear fuel. In these spectacular systems, two suns act as both host and satellite, their gargantuan gravities locked in a fierce reciprocal struggle to synchronize their rotations. Over billions of years, the stellar atmospheres are pulled into teardrop shapes, their fiery gases being dragged into alignment until the stars no longer turn relative to each other. This mutual lock creates a solar partnership of incredible stability, where each star sees only one side of its companion for the duration of its brilliant life. They orbit a common centre of mass like two glowing eyes pinned in the dark, their rotations perfectly matched to the rhythm of their shared and fiery path. This is the ultimate expression of the double lock, occurring on a scale that involves the power of entire suns rather than mere rocky moons. If we were to look closer at these binary pairs, we would see a relationship defined by a total lack of secrets between the two partners. Every flare, every sunspot, and every magnetic storm on the inward face is visible to the partner star for all of time in a synchronized embrace. They age together in a state of perfect transparency, a final and fiery testament to the power of gravity to organize even the most energetic residents of the void. This celestial marriage is the final victory of order over the chaotic fires of stellar birth. Imagine a vast and ancient cosmos where almost every close relationship between celestial bodies ends in this perfect, synchronized, and unchanging stare. It is the natural culmination of long-term intimacy in the dark, a state where two separate entities have finally resolved all of their differences into a single unified motion. The universe seems to abhor the independent, chaotic spinning of its children, working tirelessly to bring them into a state of face-to-face recognition through the drain of their energy. This universal stare is the hallmark of a mature solar system, a sign that the frantic energies of formation have finally been tamed and ordered by time. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, billions of world pairs are currently engaged in this unblinking confrontation, their gazes as steady as the stars behind them. It is a beautiful, silent communion that represents the ultimate success of the laws of physics in creating a stable and predictable reality. The unchanging stare is the ultimate comfort of the cosmos, a sign that the world has finally found where it belongs in the grand architecture of space. It is a state of total awareness, where the two worlds are forever present for one another in the silence. It is a profoundly peaceful and dignified destiny, trading the chaotic, energetic spinning of planetary youth for the steady, unblinking gaze of a synchronized maturity. In the early stages of a world's life, the rapid rotation is a sign of a system still finding its feet, a frantic and inefficient use of kinetic energy. The transition to a locked state is not a loss of vitality, but a refinement of purpose, a shift from the noise of the beginning to the signal of the end. The spinning world is a world in conflict with its surroundings, its independent motion creating friction and heat as it resists the pull of its host. The locked world, however, has achieved a state of total cooperation, its movements perfectly aligned with the forces that guide its path through the dark. It is a transition from the adolescent rebellion of the spin to the adult stability of the synchronous orbit, a calming of the planetary spirit. This maturity brings with it a level of environmental consistency that a spinning world can never know, fixing the geography of climate forever. The light and the very structure of the atmosphere find their permanent homes, allowing the world to settle into its final, most stable form. Notice the deep, effortless support of the space you inhabit, mirroring the way these mature worlds finally surrender their struggle and accept the quiet embrace of the lock. They have outgrown the need for the frantic pace of their youth, finding a deeper meaning in the stillness. Ultimately, tidal locking is the final quiet chord in the wildly energetic and complex symphony of orbital mechanics that defines the life of every star system. It is the long-held note that signals the end of the movement, the point where the frantic melodies of youth resolve into a single resonant sustain. Every collision, every gravitational slingshot, and every chaotic orbital shift is merely a precursor to this eventual silent harmony in the dark. The universe begins in a state of unimaginable energy and motion, a cacophony of spinning gas and fire that eventually condenses into the spheres we see today. Tidal locking is the process of tuning these spheres, dampening the discordant frequencies of independent rotation until only the fundamental rhythm of the orbit remains. It is the music of the spheres reaching its most perfect and minimalist expression, a singular tone that rings out across the eons. When the last world in a system finally finds its lock, the symphony is complete, and the frantic activity of the past is replaced by a grand, unmoving architecture. This state of resonance will persist until the stars themselves begin to fade, a lasting monument to the power of gravity to find the core melody of a system. It is the ultimate piece of the cosmos, a quiet and beautiful finish to the most energetic performance in existence. The universe has finally, at long last, found the perfect note and is prepared to hold it forever. Through the relentless invisible friction of gravity, the universe transforms chaotic rotation into eternal stillness, proving that even the grandest cosmic motions eventually seek a state of perfect, peaceful equilibrium. Through the relentless invisible friction of gravity, the universe transforms chaotic rotation into eternal stillness, proving that even the grandest cosmic motions eventually seek a state of perfect, peaceful equilibrium. This final realization is the quiet destination of every sun and moon, a place where all struggle ends and only balance remains. Deep within this moment of perfect alignment, your journey towards stillness begins as you direct your attention to your toes, allowing the heavy sensation of the ground to anchor them in absolute relaxation. Every tiny muscle in your feet begins to soften, surrendering its hold as the warmth of your covers wraps around your ankles and calves. Surprisingly, the body knows exactly how to mirror the calm of a locked world, finding its own version of a stable center. Let the weight of your legs sink deeper into the mattress, shedding the tension of the day like a planet shedding its spin. Your back expands against the bed, finding a comfort that requires no effort and no resistance. This quiet room is a sanctuary where your breath becomes the only clock that matters. As your chest rises and falls, feel the tension dissolving in your hands and moving slowly up to your shoulders. These muscles now melt into the pillow, releasing their burden into the soft, yielding fabric. If we were to look closer, we would see that the very air in this space is thick with the promise of rest. Your jaw unclenches, allowing your features to soften until every lingering trace of the day is gone. The muscles around your eyes grow heavy and dark, closing out the world as you move closer to the edge of sleep. Your awareness now rests solely on the sensation of the pillow beneath your head and the gentle, muffled sounds of the house. Outside the window, the environment is a distant memory, a place of movement and brightness that has no authority here in this dark, private hollow. Everything you need is already present in the softness of your blankets and the steady, reliable heartbeat that lulls you toward the edge of dreams. The breath flows in and out without thought, a slow and easy rhythm that carries you further and further from the waking state. Every limb is weighted with a pleasant, numbing fatigue that makes the bed feel like the only solid thing in an expanse of quiet. You're safe here in the stillness, perfectly held by the dark and the warmth of your own rest. Let the last few thoughts drift away like autumn leaves on a still pond, leaving the surface of your mind clear and undisturbed. The silence is your companion now, a vast and gentle presence that invites you to let go of the final threads of the day. You're falling into a sleep that is deep, dreamless, and entirely your own. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.